Encyclopaedia Britannica says, Transcendental meditation, also called TM, is a technique of meditation in which practitioners mentally repeat a special Sanskrit word or phrase, mantra, with the aim of achieving a state of inner peacefulness and bodily calm. The technique was taught by the Hindu monk Swami Brahmananda Saraswati, also known as Guru Dev, died 1953, and was promoted internationally from the late 1950s by one of his disciples, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, 1917 to 2008, through the latter's spiritual regeneration movement. The Maharishi coined the term Transcendental meditation to distinguish the technique from other meditative practices and to emphasize its independence from Hinduism, indeed from any religion. In the West, Transcendental meditation eventually came to be taught and practiced as a secular path toward mental, emotional, and physical well-being. The popularity of Transcendental meditation in the West increased significantly in the late 1960s, when the British rock group The Beatles and other celebrities joined the Maharishi's following and began to meditate. The word, transcendental, in this context is used to suggest both that this form of meditation transcends any religion and also that it allows its practitioners to reach transcendental states. The philosopher F.W.J. Schelling noted that if nature, matter, is primary, then the self, mind, must arise from nature. However, if the self is primary, then nature must arise from the self. Therefore, Schelling believed that philosophy should be divided into two basic sciences: 1, the science of nature, aka nature philosophy, and 2, the science of the self, aka transcendental philosophy. Nature philosophy makes nature, matter, the primary reality. Transcendental philosophy makes the self, mind, the primary reality. These two possible approaches to philosophy can develop either 1, a mind out of matter, nature, or 2, matter out of mind, the transcendental. Schelling did not believe that either of these positions could be privileged over the other, so he imagined that the answer to reality could be approached from two different directions, one based on matter, one on mind, meeting in the middle, so to speak. You come at the same thing from two different perspectives, two complementary angles. Schelling was therefore a pantheist, along the lines of Spinoza, believing that the universe itself, matter penetrated by mind, was the absolute, and that it was valid to consider it from either a material or mental viewpoint. This is a monism, there is only one absolute, but it looks like a dualism. The absolute can be approached from either the material or the mental angle. Fichte, Schelling's predecessor, based everything on subjective mind, the absolute ego, hence his system belonged to the school of subjective idealism. Schelling believed that nature was as much the revelation of the absolute as the individual ego was, i.e., his idea of the absolute had a material component. For Schelling, both matter and mind were two sides of a higher unity. Schelling regarded nature as visible spirit and spirit as invisible nature. The existence of the objective world is as real as the existence of the subjective world. They are given in the same act, and are the same thing viewed from different perspectives. Schelling's system was consequently often known as objective idealism. Hegel took the subjective idealism of Fichte and the objective idealism of Schelling and converted them into his own absolute idealism. Wikipedia says, absolute idealism is Hegel's account of how being is ultimately comprehensible as an all-inclusive whole, das Absolut. Hegel asserted that in order for the thinking subject, human reason or consciousness, to be able to know its object, the world, at all, there must be in some sense an identity of thought and being. Otherwise, the subject would never have access to the object and we would have no certainty about any of our knowledge of the world. To account for the differences between thought and being, however, as well as the richness and diversity of each, the unity of thought and being cannot be expressed as the abstract identity, A equals A. Absolute idealism is the attempt to demonstrate this unity using a new, speculative, philosophical method, which requires new concepts and rules of logic. According to Hegel, the absolute ground of being is essentially a dynamic, historical process of necessity that unfolds by itself in the form of increasingly complex forms of being and of consciousness, ultimately giving rise to all the diversity in the world and in the concepts with which we think and make sense of the world. Fichte, Schelling and Hegel form a great triad of thinkers. Fichte was a deist, although he was often accused of atheism since he denied that God could have a personality. seeing this as something that would limit God, Schelling a pantheist, and Hegel a panentheist. They are honorary precursors of transcendental magic. Transcendental magic is all about transcending the space-time world of matter and unleashing the power of the transcendental mind that controls the physical world. The magic belongs to defying the limitations of physical reality. Magic occurs wherever scientific materialism is exceeded, violated, hacked, thwarted, outwitted. Magic is anything that can happen that science deems impossible, but which emphatically isn't. How do sigils link to transcendental meditation? Transcendental meditation involves the silent repetition of special words over and over again. This is somewhat reminiscent of the sigillization process. The special words serve as vocal sigils, with the intended purpose of creating a quiet, relaxed mind, receptive to higher states. Sounds, chanted words, can be used instead of images to serve the sigillization process. Vocal sigils are as valid as visual sigils. Imagine the power of an orchestra, a choir, to perform thought forms. Awesome.